Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. It's Dr. Jan Fortman with Relationship Matters TV. I hope everyone is having a beautifully blessed morning, afternoon, or evening. We're here in Chicago and it's a beautiful day. We are so happy that we're finally getting at least some spring-like weather. Although we are told that tomorrow we'll be getting the smoke from forest fires in Canada, but it's only going to last for a day, and then the next day it will be in the 80s, I think, something like that. But you know how it is here. We go from 40 to 80 in a blink of an eye. Well, I want to start out today with a thought for today, a relationship thought for today. Now, a relationship without vision is like a GPS with no destination. You will keep moving, but never truly arrive. So just think about this. In a lot of relationships, it's easy to get caught up in our day-to-day life. You know, we have schedules, we solve problems, we have just a lot of stuff to do. But in your relationships, without a shared vision, the relationship might feel like it's just going through the motions. It's like using a GPS with no destination. You're on the road, you're burning energy, but you're not sure where you're going or why you're even going there. It's like almost like a compass in a sense. It gives direction, can give you some clarity, and it gives you a shared purpose, maybe. So in your personal and your professional relationships, what do you want to create together? What kind of emotional climate do you want to live in? How do you want to treat each other, especially when it's hard? So ask yourself, in your relationships, where are you headed? Or are you just driving? Just using the GPS without putting in a destination? Or are you using a compass or a map and you really don't know where you're going? So that is just a thought for today. Now, let me tell you about my guest. His name, and I hope I pronounce his last name right, but I'm sure that he will correct me. His name is Nicky Billou. That's the way I pronounce it. And that's the way I hope he pronounces it. So let me tell you a little bit about Nicky before I bring you on. Before I bring him on. He is the number one international best-selling author of the book Finish Line Thinking, TM, How to Think and Win Like a Champion, The Thought Leader's Journey, A Fable of Life and the Power of Connecting, How to Activate Profitable Relationships by Serving Your Network. He's a two-time New York best-selling author. He's an in-demand, high inspirational speaker to corporate audiences such as RBC, Lululemon, Royal LePage, and Torstar Media. He's an advisor and confidant to some of the most successful and dynamic entrepreneurs in Canada, where the smoke is coming from. He is the founder of eCircle Academy, where he runs a year-long mastermind and educational program working with coaches, consultants, corporate trainers, clinic owners, realtors, mortgage brokers, and other service-based entrepreneurs. And he helps them position themselves as authorities in their niche. He is the creator of the Thought Leader Heart Leader TM designation. And he has podcasts. It is the number one podcast in the world on thought leadership. It's called the Thought Leader Revolution. And he has interviewed over 500 of the world's top thought leaders like the astronaut Chris Hadfield, George Ross of the hit TV series The Apprentice, Barbara Corcoran, who I admire, on the Shark Tank, and so many others, including Oprah's coach, Marie Forleo. So let me bring him on. His name is Nicky Billou. Hello, Nicky.
Hello, hello, hello. How are you?
I'm doing just fantastic. How are you?
Blessed, grateful, glad to be here.
Same here. Same here. Now, did I pronounce your last name correctly?
You did.
Thank you. So it sounds like almost like is it a French or Spanish last name?
Actually, neither. It's originally a Middle Eastern last name. So
Oh,
I'm from Iran, and I'm from an ethnic minority in Iran, the Assyrians. So it's an Assyrian last name.
and Assyria. When I was teaching, like in the dark ages, I had students from Assyria.
Wow, that's
Yes, yes, this was quite some time ago. I remember that. I remember that. So, Nikki, I want to jump right into it because this is a subject matter that's fascinating. You are a thought leader. So tell us what a thought leader is.
that's a great question. So there's a couple of ways to give you that definition. So one is to draw a contrast between an expert and a thought leader. So an expert is someone who knows something, right? They know something. Trouble with experts is they're a dime a dozen, they're invisible. But a thought leader is someone who's known for knowing something. Thought leaders are the go-to authority in their space. They're rare and valuable. Another way to put it is like an expert is a cover band, a thought leader plays original music.
Okay. Interesting. Interesting. So, why do you consider yourself a thought leader? And how did you become a thought leader?
That's a great question. Um, Let me begin by telling you a bit about my backstory.
Okay.
I'm originally an immigrant from the Middle East. I'm a Christian from Iran. When I was 11 years old, there was a revolution in Iran, the Islamic Revolution. And there were gun battles in the streets. My mom and dad, they were freaking out. They're thinking to themselves, whoa, this isn't going to be a place to raise a Christian family. So they sat down and they planned. And what they did was eventually they took me and my two brothers out of Iran, first to Europe, in Greece, and then to Canada, where I now live. And you got to understand, by the time we got to Canada, I was almost 15. So it was almost 4 years, the whole journey from beginning to end to get there. I was still a kid, right? I didn't want to leave my home or my friends. But as time went on, I could see the nobility of my mother and father's sacrifice, how they left everything and everyone they knew behind so they could give me and my two brothers a better life. And they took us from a legacy of tyranny to a legacy of freedom. Now, Dr. Jan, I believe inside every human breast beats the living heart of freedom. Every man, every woman on this planet yearns to breathe free, to chart their own course, to march to the tune of their own drummer. And if you're an entrepreneur, freedom means everything to you. Everything. Without freedom, you can't have free expression. Without free expression, you can't even express the ideas you have for how to create the kind of life that you want to create. You have to rely on licking the tyrant's boot just to survive, never mind thrive. And I'd say to everybody, we must stand and jealously and zealously guard our freedoms. There are dark forces afoot in the world that seek to take them away from us. We must never allow that to happen. In your great nation, the United States of America, good men and women have fought, bled, and died, not just for freedom for Americans, but for freedom for the whole of humanity throughout history. And I got to say, if you're an entrepreneur, you got to respect that and you got to stand up for that. And to those entrepreneurs that say, no, man, I'm not into that sort of thing. I'm not into politics. I'm not into that. Maybe so, but politics, that sort of thing is into you and it's coming for you, whether you like it or not. So who am I? Nicky Billou, thought leader. Well, I'm a man who stands for freedom. They call me the freedom man. I'm a man who reads. I read over 100 books a year, fiction and nonfiction alike. I'm a man who gives a good gosh darn about his fellow man and woman. I believe in the majesty of the human spirit, the human soul. I'm all about unleashing that and bringing freedom to good men and women. Because doing that and that alone is what makes the world a better place. So as a thought leader, there's lots of things you can say about me. There's lots of things that, I do. But the main thing is I'm my mother and father's son. I'm a child born in tyranny, but living now in freedom. And as an entrepreneur, that's what I stand for. I want all entrepreneurs to be free. I want them to have the same chances I got from living in this great country of Canada and the great civilization, Western civilization that gives men and women freedom. And I want to see entrepreneurs succeed because It's my mom, my dad, the sacrifices that they made that allowed us to succeed. So I want to help other entrepreneurs succeed. And so many entrepreneurs, good people, good people, but they're not good business people. They don't understand marketing. They don't understand sales. Many of them are scared of selling. They're like, oh my God, I'm not one of those pushy people, those people that are like reeking of commission breath the moment they walk into the room. And I get that, but that means that instead of going after business that they should get, that business doesn't go to them because they don't go after it. And some charlatan marketer comes in and scoops it up. And if they deliver it, some happy accident, and everybody loses. The entrepreneur loses because they don't get the business they should have gotten, and they financially suffer. The client loses because they don't get a good person helping them. Even the charlatan loses because the good Lord believes in the law of what goes around comes around. And charlatans that do charlatan-like things are going to have charlatan-like things done to them, right? So I'm all about showing the good men and women, listen, stop being so scared of sales. Take the attention off of you. Put the attention where it belongs. Instead of thinking, oh my God, I hope they like me. I hope they do business with me. Say to yourself, I hope, God, that I'm the right person to serve this person that you've put in front of me. I wonder what they're dealing with and how they are suffering. Make me an instrument of thy will. And that, Dr. Jan, is why I, Nicky Billou, am a thought leader, because I know who I am. I know what I stand for. I got a compelling story. I've written books. I got podcasts. I'm a guest on people's podcasts. Over 3.5 million people have heard me on other people's shows. Thousands and thousands and thousands have heard me on my show. And my books have sold a few copies. And so I've become known. And I help people succeed. I help good people who should be making money but are not. I help them make money. I help them believe in themselves. And I help them go out there and make this life the life that it should be.
Okay. So, Nicky, I love that. I love where you are coming from. What I want to know is, when did you discover in yourself that you were a thought leader? When did you know that you have a message or something where you can help people? When did you realize that? Because when you think of, I'm thinking about your background and all what you've been through, you know, and the revelations that you have about yourself. But how did you come to say, okay, I have all this experience, I am a thought leader?
Well, I don't know that it came quite the way that you're saying it, but I have been in not just the business, but in the life of helping people since I was a kid. My father was all about that. He always would tell me, son, life's about people. It's not about money. He even would say business, son, is about people, not money. And when he said that to me, I said, Dad, well, come on, you can't do business without money. He said, that's true, son, but without people, there's no need for money to do business. What is business after all? It's solving problems for people for a profit. You solve acute problems for amazing people at an awesome profit. That's the awe-inspiring purpose of business. So I've been bred to be helpful to people. That's been my shtick. It's find people, help people. That's what it's been all about. And at some point in my life, I came to the realization that I knew a thing or two that other people didn't know. And then maybe I should lean into those things. And I had mentors in my life. And I think this is important. A lot of people go through life, you know, and they go, oh, well, I'm going to try to figure this out on myself. I think that's crazy. Don't do it life alone. Don't do business alone, right? Hashtag don't do 2025 alone. Find people who can give you help, who can give you a way to compress time and get to your results and your goals faster. And for me, I had a fellow, he was a client of mine, and he told me one day he thought we should go into business together. And I said, why? He said, because you've got a skill set and I respect it. And I've got a skill set And I think I can, show you to respect it. And I did. And he's the one who taught me all about thought leadership as a concept. And as we started to learn about it, I said to him one day, can anybody become a thought leader? He said, well, in theory, yes, but you got to discover what it is that you actually know that others don't know in the way that you know. And there's a process to do that. So we went through one of these processes that somebody taught. And lo and behold, I laid it all out. And I'm like, okay, I know a thing or two about this subject. So one of the things I knew something about was how to help people perform, how to win at the highest levels. Because I had a business partner who was an Olympic champion. I actually had two business partners who were Olympic champions in track and field, Donovan Bailey, Mark McCoy. So I learned from hanging around these guys for several years how these people thought, these Olympic champions thought. Their mind and their thinking processes were different. So I go, okay, I've learned a thing or two about that, and I've been applying it to how I do what I do. Great. That's one thing I had thought leadership in. Now, in the last several years, I've been a guest on 750 podcasts, right? So I know a thing or two about how to be a good guest on a podcast. I got some thought leadership around that. I wrote a book about it. My latest book is Get Booked and Get Paid, how to generate 6 figures plus a year through podcast guesting. So these are the sorts of things that over time I learned about, and I had mentors to show me and guide me to discover the innate expertise that I already had within me. And I think at some level, everybody needs that, Dr. Jan. Someone to guide them. Being on your own is not the way to do life. Success is a team sport. Life is a team sport.
So you said something that I want to ask you, and I think this would help a lot of my guests. How do you be a good guest on a podcast?
That's a good question. Listen to you, smart lady. So it all starts with your why. Why do you want to be a guest on a podcast? Most people look at the podcast and go, oh, they got an audience. Okay, this is good. I want to go, and the audience will get to know me, and maybe they'll buy from me. Yeah, that's great. Well, I think that's a weak intention. I think that's a weak intention. Or maybe I'll get some likes, followers. Maybe someone will call me, whatever. I think the proper intention for going on a podcast first has to be to give. So there's an audience of people listening to a podcast, whether that's an audience of 1 or 1 million or 100 million, like a Joe Rogan, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, the reason they're listening to the podcast is they are curious. They want to learn. They want to be edified. They want to be uplifted. In the last 5 years, the vast majority of humanity feels like it's been beat up a little bit by the world and by the powers that be that have lied to them about things like the scamdemic and all that other stuff, right? So at the end of the day, they're looking for inspiring voices. So I go on a show, I'm thinking there's an audience that's listening to me. God has given me a skill set to speak in a compelling, high energy manner, to speak clearly, precisely, and articulately, and to share valuable concepts with people that can benefit their lives. So that's my number one job. Inspire the audience, uplift them, edify them. So that's number one. Now, number two, and this is very important, people go on a show and they completely miss the point on the host. You, as the host of your show, you are putting a lot of energy, a lot of time, a lot of money and opportunity cost into producing a show. As someone who has his own show, I get that, right? And I see that and see the value in that. And it's a big risk when you bring a guest on a show. If that guest is a dud, that can waste your time, ruin your brand, ruin your show, cost you listeners and followers. So me, I come on the show and I'm like, I want to make her happy she brought me on. I want her to think to herself when this show's over, gosh darn it, that's the best darn guest I ever had. I want him back. Because that is my way of honoring you and what you're doing to put a show on. Now, the third reason that I go on a show, the third intention, the third why, is so simple that the moment I share it with you, you're going to go, of course. But like most people, you didn't think of it until I shared it with you. Now, the modern podcast interview style is an opportunity for two people to build a relationship. To build a relationship. This is like an old-fashioned Chamber of Commerce meeting. This is an old-fashioned BNI meeting. But instead of in person in Chicago or in Toronto, you and I get to do this on cyberspace. And in the 20 to 40 minutes that you spend interviewing me, we're going to get to know each other, to like each other, and to trust each other to a certain degree. I mean, it's not a lifetime of trust, but there'll be a certain degree of trust. Now, Dr. Jan, I don't know about you, but I'm not a spring chicken. I wasn't born yesterday. See, me, I'm one of those people that in my business, I do business with people I know, I like, and I trust. And the way that I know, like, and trust people is I spend time with them. I speak with them. I engage in an exchange of ideas with them. And that is the surest, fastest way to create that connection, that relationship. And having been on over 750 shows in 3 years, I want to tell you that I have done business with podcast hosts. I've become clients of podcast hosts. I have had them become clients of mine. I have had collaborations with podcast hosts. And I have created relationships for them, and they've created relationships for me that have been mutually and financially beneficial. As a result of going on shows 2, 3, 4, 5 hours a week maximum, I have generated part-time over $500,000 in income.
Okay.
That's how you podcast guest correctly with the intentions that I just mentioned.
Well, you know what? I wish a lot of my guests thought the way you thought. Because a lot of them, when they do come on, it's to sell something, to sell their service, to sell their product. But one thing I see, one thing I like, I'd rather have a conversation than have an interview, because when you're just interviewing people, it's question and answer. You really don't get to know who they are. But that's me. To me, when you're having a conversation and it's not just back and forth, question, answer, then to me, that's the way you form a relationship. But I do have a question. In your position as a thought leader, have you ever questioned your thought leadership?
What do you mean exactly by that?
Well, okay. So with your thought leadership, you have a way, well, like you said, things that other people don't know. In other words, you're different from an expert. And you feel you know how to get people, say, from point A to Z.
Mm-hmm.
But in that process, have you ever stopped and questioned, is this the right way that I'm leading this person. What I thought is not really working, or what, or just question yourself.
No. No.
Oh.
Look, listen, the way I see it is a big reason why people seek help is because they need reassurance that there is a way out of their problem. And if they could have figured it out on their own, they would have. They would have. They come to me because they haven't figured it out on their own. So let me tell you a story, Dr. Jan.
Okay.
I had a client. I'm going to call her Dr. Vicky. Now, Dr. Vicky was a functional medicine doctor.
Okay.
Really, really brilliant lady. Successful too. She did 6 figures a year in income for herself. But when she came to us, she was in a bind. And here was her bind, right? Her father was dying of brain cancer, glioblastoma. And she was daddy's girl. You know what I'm saying? And she was devastated, but she wanted to honor him. And the best way she could come up with was to succeed in business as an entrepreneur, because he had been a successful entrepreneur. So when she came to us, she said, I really want to tenfold my business success. Show my dad, see, he raised this girl right. Now, a few months later, her father passed. And I went to his wake. And when we started speaking with her, I said to her, I said, listen, tell me a little bit about your business. Who do you help? And she said to me, well, the truth is I can really help anybody with any business. I mean, a business, any health problem. And I'm like, yeah, that's not going to work to grow a business. You really need to narrow your niche, right? And she said, well, how do I do that? And I said, we're going to go through an exercise. So I put together a powerful exercise called the ideal client exercise. Imagine a Venn diagram with a circle that says best results, another circle that says enjoyed the most, and the final one that says easiest to do business with. So what are the clients you got the best results for? I said, make a list. And she did. And I said, what are the clients you really enjoyed working with the most? Like they put a smile on your face whenever you talk to them. Make a list. She did. What are the clients that were easiest to do business with? I.e., when you gave them the price, they said, here you go, here's my credit card. They took your coaching quickly, easily. They referred you lots of clients. It was just easy to do business with. It wasn't, problem like pulling teeth, right? She made a list of those. And I said, okay, who's on all 3 lists? Give that to me as a list. And she did. And here's what we discovered. They were almost all women. And they were almost all women over 45, married, happily married, with children, and almost all successful in the world of work, like a professional woman, like an accountant, a lawyer, or a business executive, like a director level, C-suite level type woman, or an entrepreneur. So you look at this, and as I'm describing to you, you're going, okay, so what's bothering these gals, right? They sound like they got great lives. I mean, what the hell? Well, Dr. Jen, as you know, I'm a man, and I don't pretend to understand women. Um, but they had an issue, and I've heard this is important to women. You can tell me if I'm wrong, but these ladies, because they were over 45, um, to a woman, no longer felt young, desirable, and beautiful. They just felt that that had passed them by, like they gained weight or whatever, right? Now, like I said, I'm a man. I don't pretend to understand this, but I've heard that women like to feel young, desirable, and beautiful. I've heard that's a thing, So, um, she said, yeah, all these gals I worked with, they wanted to feel beautiful like they used to feel. And she said to me, and I have a solution for them. I said, okay, tell me. She said, so here's the truth. The number, how old you are, we can't do anything about, right? You're going to grow older every year. If you were 35 last year, you'll be 36 this year. If you're 75 last year, you'll be 76 this year. Can't do a thing about that. She said, however, aging, that's totally optional. She said, you can be just as beautiful, sexy, desirable in your 50s, 60s, 70s, even 80s as you were in your 20s, 30s, and 40s. I'm like, you can deliver on that? She said, oh, yeah. I'm like, all right. I said, let's name it. She says, yeah, what can we name it? I said, I got it. Get your sexy back. Get your sexy back. So, anyways, it was a hit. These women, they came back in droves. She doubled her income in her first year, doubled. In her second year, she doubled it again. And in her third year, she doubled it again. So in 3 years, double, double, double means tenfold what it was at the beginning. She went from 6 figures a year to 6 figures a month.
Wow.
She honored her father. Yep. And she found a way to feel confident in herself and her abilities as a businesswoman, not just as a functional medicine doctor. And people ask me, they go, Nicky, come on, man, that sounds almost too good to be true. And I go, I understand, but it really isn't. I mean, it's doable. For me, my ideal client, doesn't matter if they're a man or a woman, but they're generally someone over 40 who's had some business experience, who's had some success, but they're not anywhere near the success they believe they should be at. They're in like what they call the golden handcuff zone. This is kind of between $60,000 and $200,000 a year in income, where it's not so bad that like your back's against the wall, but it's also not all the money you need to live the greatest life that you could ever imagine. And people in that zone who are like sick of it, I know I can get those golden handcuffs released, and I can get them to a beautiful place where they're going to make a beautiful amount of money. And that inner angst that they're having about, am I enough? Am I good enough? That'll be in their rearview mirror, because they were part of our community and we love on them. We believe in them, and they're around other people just like themselves who are also being loved on and believed in. And they love that. They absolutely love that.
Well, you're right about that. Women always want to feel beautiful, sexy, desirable, all the way up to they leave this earth, to tell you the truth. Yeah.
Amen.
My mom was beautiful, and she believed that, and she instilled that into me. Like, age does not matter. But I did a presentation on aging gracefully. How to stay young while getting older, so to speak. Because most of my audience knows that I'm very well seasoned. I'll say
Amen.
that.
Amen.
So look, a couple of questions. Oh, okay, came in while you were speaking. The first one here, it says, who has been your best guest on your podcast? And do you have a favorite person?
So I've had a fellow who's been on my show more than anybody else. And in that sense, like he's a favorite person. His name is Mark Von Muser. He used to be Tony Robbins's director of sales training and coaching. He helped Tony add, over 150 million to his business over a 5-year period. And he's also helped people add a couple $1 billion in sales through his methods. He is incredible at heart-driven selling, and he's been on my show over 20 times. So that's
Wow.
been darn cool. I've had some very famous people on my show as well, which has been kind of cool. I had Scott Adams, who created the Dilbert cartoon series. He was a guest. I had Jack Canfield, who wrote Chicken Soup for the Soul.
Yeah.
And his co-creator Mark Victor Hansen was also on my show. Actually, he was on my show twice. I had George Ross from The Apprentice. I had Marie Forleo, as you said, Barbara Corcoran. I also had the founder of the Canadian Freedom Convoy, Tamara Lick. That was pretty cool. The little grandma who organized the truckers to give us our freedom back in this country. That was pretty amazing. I had Kevin Sorbo, the actor, on my show. That was pretty cool. He played Hercules back in the day, and he was on Andromeda as well. So we've had some interesting people, and I can go on and on about that.
Okay.
What's been cool about that is it's an opportunity to learn from these people. Like I look at every podcast interview with a guest as an opportunity to be coached and mentored by somebody really smart in what they do for half an hour to an hour. And I got to tell you, I think that's the best thing about having a podcast is learning from my guests.
True that. That's very true. So now tell us about your book, The Thought Leader's Journey.
Oh, cool. You put it on the screen. That's awesome. So that's a book I wrote basically for you if you are someone with a big dream on your heart who has yet to have taken the leap, to find the courage to take the leap. And it's told in the form of a fable of somebody who has a dream, wants to do their own thing, but hasn't taken that leap yet. And it's the story of this fella's journey from being a little bit afraid and not believing he's enough to being guided to see that he's enough, having people believe in him that he's enough, and using that belief as fuel to go out there and make it happen. So if that's you, if you have always wanted to do your own thing, this is a book that could give you the inspiration to go out there and do that.
I like that. I like that. You put something on my mind. It's like I consider myself an expert, but I want to consider myself as a thought leader. I like that.
Good
Versus you have inspired
well,
me.
the difference is an extra zero in your income. You know what I mean? So being a thought leader means you 10x your income. And that's a lot of the clients that have seen us, Dr. Jan, that's kind of the situation they're in. They're really good at what they do. They're just a little invisible to the marketplace, and they're not making the money they should be making. And that's really what thought leadership can do for you. It can help you make the money you should make and make the difference you were born to make all at the same time.
Okay. All righty. So my last question to you, well, no, next to the last question, is being a thought leader, does this require vulnerability on your part?
It requires radical honesty with yourself. So in that sense, absolutely.
Okay.
I'll tell you a little story, maybe a final story of someone, which I think will demonstrate this in spades. So there was a woman who came to us because of really intense life circumstances. I'm going to call her Julie. Now, Julie was the country director for Canada for one of the world's oldest and largest personal development companies. These guys have been around since the 60s, and they, do their programs all over the world. I think in 13 countries or something like that. And so before she came to us, she'd been the country director. She's very successful, but she felt she needed some help. So she brought a man on to help her run the company in Canada, whom she thought was very talented. Kind of like Steve Jobs back in the early 80s with Apple when he brought John Scully on board. And at first, everything was great. They got along and they did great things together. The company was growing. But after about a year, their visions of the future started to diverge. Mm-hmm. And there was a board of directors involved. And the board of directors sided with him. And she was out of her own company, just like Steve Jobs was in Apple in the early 80s when John Scully became the president and CEO and they kicked Steve out. And very much like Steve, she was hurt, she was stung, she felt betrayed, and she was lost and bereft. So for 18 months, she didn't know what she was doing. So someone who knew us and knew her put us together. And me and my lady, we worked together. We could see this was a good person in pain. So we did what we do, which is we loved on her. We believed in her. We helped her believe in herself. And we did all the exercises we do to help her narrow her niche. And anyways, she had a good niche figured out. Entrepreneurs of 8-figure companies who were burning out. So she started to get to work and she made $10,000 in profits in her first month. In her second month, she made $12,000 in profits. And we could see she was working really hard and she was undercharging. And I believe it's important for you to charge properly, not gouge people, but you charge people based on the lifetime value of the solution you provide to their problem with your offer. Mm-hmm. So she raised her fees and she was at $18,000 in her third month, right? So she was thrilled. But in her fourth month, she broke out, girl. She did $62,200 in profit. Like, that's a big leap, right? That was amazing. And the figure will become germane in a moment. So Dr. Jan, she lives in Ottawa. I live in Toronto. At the time, my eldest son, was playing soccer quite seriously. He was 12 and he had a tournament in Ottawa. So I was driving him to Ottawa and I called her because her eldest son was his age. And I thought, hey, listen, why don't you come and bring your son and watch us play soccer, watch him play soccer, and we'll all have lunch. And she goes, yeah, sure. So we all did. Everybody had a great time. And then when the tournament was over, we won, which was terrific. We drove back home to Toronto. Mm-hmm. So a few weeks later, we had one of our branded thought leader immersion workshops. This is a high-end, exclusive 3-day event, right? It's a good investment event. It's like 10 grand to attend. And it really sets you up for massive success as a thought leader. So we come to the point in the event where we do an enrollment into the next program, an upsell, if you will, right? I'm sure you've seen these. You've been at events. They do an upsell. It's very normal, and it's usually a natural upsell into something that can really help you get to the next level if you're with a good, honest people, right? Which we are. And so the way I do it, and this is beautifully effective, is I don't go bragging on us. I ask some of our existing clients to brag on us. It's way better than me doing it, right? I mean, self-serving if I do it, but if our clients do it, it's not. So I go, would you like to share? Who'd like to share? Put up your hand. And normally people would put up their hand and I'd pick somebody. No, not today. Julie jumped on stage and almost knocked me on my butt. Right? I'm like, okay. Guess you want to talk. Go ahead. I recede into the background. And There's silence, silence, more silence. And then I hear a shoulder go up. I go, what? And oh, it was a sob. And I'm like, oh my God, she's crying on stage. This is a disaster. Why is she crying? What did I do? Right? My wonderful lady, being much more sensory aware of what's happening, comes on the stage with a box of tissues and she gratefully grabs them and she blows her nose. And then she looks at me and, she says, come here. And I stand next to her, looking cool, but feeling like not cool at all. And she, between her sniffles and cries, says, Nicky, you didn't know this, but when you and your little son came to Ottawa to visit with me and my little son was hyper excited, like 12-year-old boys are, and said, Mommy, who are we going to go meet? Who are we going to meet, Mama? And I shut him up. I said, oh, sweetheart, we're going to go meet Nicky Billou and his son. And then she said, all of a sudden, my sweet angel of a child became very quiet. And she's like, what just happened? And he said to her in a very small voice, oh, Mommy, are we going to meet the man who saved our family?
Wow.
And I am a Persian man. I am old school. I am not one of these weak 21st century dudes. I don't cry in public. You know what I mean? Old school masculine fella. I cried like a little baby on stage, and everyone's going, oh, and we hugged. And then she goes, when I first came to meet you all those months ago, we were broke. And I'm the breadwinner in the family. My husband's an artist, and he was, right? And we hadn't paid the mortgage in months, and the bank was knocking on our door wanting the house, right? And we were fighting about money in front of our kids like cats and dogs. And our kids are freaking out, going, oh my God, Mom and Dad are going to break up. The family's going to break up. And she said, and I was thinking that too. And she said, but working with you, I made the money, I paid off our arrears, caught up, and have money in the bank besides. So we stopped fighting, and the family's stronger than ever. You literally helped us save our family. So we hugged, we cried. She sat down. Now, normally I ask 1, 2, 3 people to share. I made an executive decision that this was going to be the only share of the day. And I said to my sweetheart, Teresa, honey, hand out the registration forms, please. And she did. And there were 8 people in the room for a $40,000 annual investment. Okay. This is not a tiny investment. You understand what I'm saying, right? Dr. Jan, this is an investment. This is an investment. Normally, some people say, I'm in, some people say, I'm out, and some people say, we got to talk. Well, on this day, Dr. Jan, for the first time ever, everyone immediately signed up. Immediately. They got the paper and they all signed up. And 2 of the fellas in the room had made a point of the day before coming to me and saying, Nicky, I need to speak to you on the break in private. I'm like, all right. He said, listen, I want you to know I didn't fall off the back of a turnip truck, okay? I've been in these events before. I know you're going to have yourself an enrollment opportunity. That's what you call it here, right? Enrollment opportunity, an upsell. I just want you to know, I want you to be disappointed, but I'm not going to take you up on your upsell, all right? Just don't be mad. So there was a little edge, a little energy, you know what I mean? Like, almost like, and I'm like, dude, man, all good. You do what suits you. No problem. And they laughed, and the hard edge was still there, but it receded a bit. They were the first 2 guys to enroll. The first 2. And the one fella, the one with the super hard edge, came up to me and just narrowed his eyes and goes, you son of a bitch. I'm like, whoa, dude. What's up? He said, I told you I wasn't enrolling your enrollment opportunity. And I'm like, okay. He said, and I quote, and excuse my language, but I guess you're not totally full of shit. And I do need help. And
well, Nicky, we only got a minute to go.
That's the end of my story.
but you have really shown us really, I guess I could say your expertise, but your thought leadership, and really what it means. And what I wanted to tell people, because we only got a couple of minutes, and there are people who don't view the show, but who listen, just on Audible. But I wanted them to know how they could reach you. Now, the people who are watching, they see it on the lower third, but they can find you on Instagram, and you spell his name NickYBillou. You can also find him on www.thethoughtleaderrevolution.com. I wanted to get that in, before you go, because I'm sure that my viewers and my listeners definitely want to really, get to know you better. And you also have your eCircle Academy, and that's www.ecircleacademy.com. But if you go on the thoughtleaderrevolution.com, he also has a free book, and I think you can find out more about him. But Nicky, time just flies. And I really want to thank you for being the guest on my show. And yes, I see why they call you the greatest podcast guest ever.
Thank you.
But thank you so much.
Thanks
So
for
you
having
have
me.
a beautiful, blessed day up there in Canada.
Thank you so much.
And keep your forest fires and your smoke to yourself. All righty. Thank you so much.
Thanks. It's a pleasure.
All righty. Bye-bye. Wow, this has been great. The time went by so fast. So I'm keeping where you can reach him on the internet. And I know they're going to shut me off. But anyway, this has been Relationship Matters TV. I got so involved. This has been Relationship Matters TV. And I will see you again next week. Remember, there are all kinds of relationships and there are all kinds of relationship matters. Life is about relationships. See you again next week on Relationship Matters TV. Bye-bye.